So you can imagine knowing that there's 230,000 documents and there were over 150 legal boxes from the library filled with his material. So when I saw it, it was kind of like, it was overwhelming, the size of the discovery, but I didn't yet know what all was in these boxes. We restore old homes for a living, have been doing it for 3 decades. And this particular material was hidden in the basement in a small room that was basically quarantined off because the door had collapsed in from the outside, and there was really no access except for a small window to peek into the room. So when I finally had a chance to get into that room and take a peek at it, that's when I started to recognize that it was extremely important historical records.
My name is Janice Allen. I'm president of the Historic Jackson Ward Association and co-chair of the Ealey Project, TEP.
My name is Jim Vajant. I'm president of the Ealey Project, co-founder of the Ealey Project with my wife Sasha Finch. And we're just delighted to have you here with us today. Roland J. Duke Ealey was a prominent icon of the Civil Rights Movement, was a genuine community lawyer for the people of Jackson Ward, and he was also a member of the General Assembly here in Richmond. The type of work Mr. Ealey did will never be not relevant. It's about what America is, the struggles we've gone through, the hardships of the African American community, Native Americans, people of color in general. The cases that he was involved with are 1946, there was a case called Irene Morgan versus Greyhound Bus. In 1949-1950, he was an attorney on the Martinville 7 case, which was the unfortunate demise of 7 African Americans for falsely being claimed of raping a white woman. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, a major case in the United States, and he was a part of that group, the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP National Division. And it was the discovery of the document that I'm about to reference that caused us to pause all of our cursory looks, because it was his working document and it was distributed from the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, and they were representing the 17 southern states and the District of Columbia. And it's his working document with his notes, his handwritten messages and crossouts, and it was the document that was defining Brown for the case of Brown versus Board of Education. So he was intimately involved from the very beginning and before with such cases. There was a case that he litigated all the way to the Supreme Court. It was called Johnson versus Board of Education. He was also a member of a group called the Richmond 34, who were in protest. In 1963, his case is called Johnson versus the state of Virginia. 1965, Green versus New Kent County Board of Education, and it was the desegregation of school buses across the country.
Yep, and back to the Brown versus Board of Education, like most things in Jackson Ward, and particularly in Richmond and in that era, people worked together. So we had the Honorable Roland J. Duke Ealey doing the work that he was doing, but he was also alongside a lot of other luminaries in the area, the Oliver Hills, the Spotswood Robinson, the Henry Marshes. So together, a lot of this work was done. So you may, sometimes one person might be out front, you couldn't tell who was doing all the work in the background, and the other times it may be the other individual. But it was a bunch of absolutely concentrated work. And very focused work that helped us get these things passed.
Now, one of the cases that I mentioned earlier, Irene Morgan versus Greyhound Bus, this is 9 years before Rosa Parks put her protest together, and Irene Morgan did so as well in 1946. Not quite as well known, more of an unsung hero, like Mr. Ealey. But her case was not litigated on civil rights. No racial issues were involved. What actually happened was that the Greyhound Bus was carrying her from Virginia to Maryland to go to a doctor. When she was presented with the option of move further back in the black section than she already was, because it was a white person who needed to sit down because the bus was starting to fill up, she declined the offer, and they ultimately arrested her. And the NAACP National Chapter picked up the case not because of civil rights issues, but because Greyhound Bus broke interstate commerce laws. And that case was successful, and Irene Morgan was liberated from that particular false arrest.
And I think that one move may allow that to stay in history in today's current environment.
Yeah.
That may not get washed away.
Yeah, exactly. Our senior senator from, I want to say, the 40s was a high-level Virginia Democratic politician who was powerful because of his absolute oppression of anything black. No successful job opportunities, no school issues, not even standing on a corner improperly would have satisfied this man. But his efforts were the epitome of what African Americans had to go through when it came to oppression. And it was probably a pivotal point in the application of the black codes and the Jim Crow laws, because he wanted to be Jim Crow himself, I think. That's just my humor and interpretation of that. But as far as that was concerned, the whole state of Virginia was engaged in his efforts. And you can imagine at the time, 1940 to 1965, if it wasn't white, it wasn't right. And so that doesn't bode well for anyone of an African American community. Mr. Ealey's wife, Bessie Mae Binford Ealey, was his assistant in his law practice. And one of the things that I've come to see, and I think it will bear out fruit in the long run, is that they teamed up to create a system of protecting the important civil rights activities that were taking place in those 17 states and the District of Columbia, and they were hiding it right under the nose of Mr. Byrd. They were very clever, because it would not have been unlikely for him to break into his law office and start going through his files.
And as Jim goes into that story a bit more as we continue, we're going to come to truly understand that Miss Bessie Mae Binford is a woman in her own right, and there's a legacy of hers that needs to be unveiled as well.
So one of the things that we discovered was that Theodore Holmes, another member of our TEP project, along with my wife Sasha Finch, but Theodore Holmes and I were going through the documents, and clearly we were, in a very cursory look, but careful, we're starting to pick up on some remarkable documents that were coming out of the NAACP, Crusade for Voters, campaigns against African Americans having to deal with second-class citizenship. But what appears to be the case is that Bessie Mae Binford, either on her own or with the guidance of her husband, Mr. Ealey, who was a clever person in his own right, began to hide documents on the backs of other simple cases, like Aliana got into an accident with her car. She came to the attorney's office, they worked out the case, and this was a letter that was just letting her know that everything was going okay. And when we found that document, we turned it over just to go to the next document, and on the back of it were NAACP meetings, planning schedules, all kinds of things that were related to the civil rights movement. And in the cursory look that Mr. Holmes and I took the time to do, we've revealed several documents following that pattern.
And we are saying that it's an interpretation at this point.
Yes,
right?
it is.
So it's an interpretation
and
and definitely worth being explored further.
Right, exactly. Thank you for clarifying my behavior.
I think it's fair to say that he has been recognized some. I really don't want it to be out that there's nothing out there on him, because there is. There was a real push, I think, in the 70s to get his legacy known. There's a tribute to him over in Churchill, because he also had a home there for a while. And so some stuff is out on Ealey, but not a lot. And the thing is, I just think that if there's no one to carry the torch, it doesn't go forward. He had no kids. and that kind of thing. So his legacy was pretty much left in this house right here, in boxes in this basement. And it was the discovery in boxes in this basement, right? And it was the discovery of these boxes and the really tenacity to get these boxes and all the contents documented and archived that's led to his legacy. And I think Ealey is like so many others out here. There are stories. There are so many buried stories. It was so significant at one point that there was an Ealey Day designated in Virginia. His birthday was designated as Ealey Day. And then you can see a little bit of traction from that, but then it didn't continue because of lack of someone to carry the story and to pull the thread. And that's why TEP is here.
It was indeed because there was a lack of material to work on. And up until the discovery, which contains 230,000 documents and artifacts, that his legacy was mostly just hidden. And it was hidden in his own house, probably Bessie Mae's idea to hide it. But
back to interpretations.
That is again an interpretation. So you take into account the fact that his work was not revealed to the general public and made available to people to explore and expand on his work and show how it connects to a host of other icons that are in the civil rights movement. And then add to that he was in the shadow of those giants, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King. The list is very large, John Lewis. So you add those two things together, and I think without any large structural support to carry his legacy and the baton forward, that's the relevance of the Ealey Project. The Ealey Project's mission is to reveal the legacy of the Honorable Roland J. Duke Ealey, and that will mostly be accomplished by the successful archiving being done right now at the Library of Virginia. So that mission statement will take place. The Ealey Project just jumps it a whole lot further. It encourages the community to get involved. That's the importance of the relationship with the Historic Jackson Ward Association. Before we signed any contract with the archiving process, we reached out to the community, got the community's guidance. Some of the family members of Mr. Ealey were brought into the fold. And so we crafted a contract that is conducive to protecting the legacy of the Honorable Roland J. Duke Ealey.
Another part of the relevancy of Mr. Ealey and where we came upon him before. As everyone knows, or as most people know, Jackson Ward is the National Historic Landmark District. And we got that designation in 1978. And that designation was mostly built on the entrepreneurial and the entertainment and all the stuff that came with us being the Black Wall Street and the Harlem of the South, and it was built on that legacy, so that time period. In the early 2000s, maybe around 2004, we went in to expand our historic recognition to include the significant work that a lot of people out of Jackson Ward, particularly our lawyers, contributed to civil rights. And in that lineup, of course, was Mr. Ealey. But as Jim said, he was alongside a lot of additional luminaries. So that part is very significant, and we were really pleased that we were able to extend the designation based on the contributions of people from our community to civil rights. And I keep coming back to the civil rights thing because no matter where we are in the country right now, the civil rights piece of this has to continue to be the prominent piece of conversation.
Something relevant to what Janice just brought up was the historic character of Jackson Ward and how it was ripped apart in 1950 as a result of the eminent domain grab that took place by the federal government when it was putting forward an interstate highway project. There was deliberate action there to focus on African American communities. They tore them apart at will. And Jackson Ward is one of those prominent communities that is deserving of, let's just say, reacquiring the soul of our community, which is the belly of the community, landmass. So you can imagine knowing that there's 230,000 documents and there were over 150 legal boxes from the library filled with his material. And so when I saw it, it was kind of like, it was overwhelming, the size of the discovery. I looked through several cases. Mr. Ealey's name kept coming up on document after document after document. And then I opened one file and his business card came flying out of it, landed on at my feet. So I picked it up and it was his General Assembly business card from his days from 1983 to 1992. So when I spotted that, I immediately became more intrigued with what is all this stuff. And so I did what all good 21st century people do, is I Googled Mr. Ealey's name. And the first article that popped up was a 1992 Washington Post article, and it was covering the story of his passing and how the then governor, first African-American governor in the United States, L. Douglas Wilder, was lowering the flag at the Capitol and at the governor's mansion to half-mast in honor of his childhood friend. So I knew that these papers went way back and that they had relevance to some serious other political figures and civil rights icons in the city of Richmond. So I have a small acquaintance with ex-Governor Wilder, and so I grabbed my phone, I texted him immediately and said, as you know, I'm going through this building in Jackson Ward. He knew what we did for a living, and I said I came across hundreds of boxes, and they're all boxes filled with legal documents from a gentleman named Roland J. Ealey. 10 seconds later, Governor Wilder texted me back, and he advised me to not throw away a single document in this collection, and that he'd call me shortly. And quite honestly, the rest is history. And that's what we're discovering, real history.
And to get back to the genesis of the question, why are we inspired to do this? And I think Jim has really gone and laid out what some of the broadest of the ranges can be. I mean, to the core, that's why we are interested. But more specifically, I am most interested in getting this man's story out, because I think the more stories we can get out about what individuals have done, the less it seems so odd that people are doing things. So he, like I say, he is one of many. And for Jackson Ward, I'm always excited to find another member of this illustrious community that has done great things. I'm never surprised, I'm just always excited. And so Mr. Ealey's story is indeed very rich. And I think people should know who he is and also what his contribution has been to Virginia, to the city of Richmond, and of course for me, most importantly, to the Jackson Ward community. So as we try to attack the bigger issues of all the stuff that's out there and wrong and crazy, I just want to make sure we don't lose getting him and who he is and his story and his role in all of this out. So we go out wide and then come back in specifically to Mr. Ealey. This particular spotlight is absolutely perfect opportunity to get some of the information out. So we thank you for coming to us with this opportunity. We just had a phenomenal session with the African American Genealogical and Historical Society last week, where we were able to, actually Jim was able to give a fantastic presentation there. We have also partnered with the Richmond Free Press, where they did a inaugural story for us. They were the ones who had an exclusive coverage for it. And then today I walk in and Jim tells me that we're in the Free Press again today, talking about what happened at the meeting with the Oggs Group. We're trying to do whatever we can to start bringing the community in. Working again with VCU, there's a young lady who's putting together a scholarly paper on the life of Mr. Ealey, and that should be available shortly. We're doing some work with the University of Richmond. And Jim mentioned eminent domain and the highway situation. So we've had a chance to work with the University of Richmond, where they have gone in and used the 1950 census data to help us know exactly who lived everywhere in Jackson Ward by location and by family. And that's just phenomenal. And then there are some other things that we're asking either VCU and or other partners to help us with. Small things they seem like, but really quick things to help people get to know who Mr. Ealey is, so we can do leave behinds after we have conversations like this and we've got something tangible that people can have. We've also done a PowerPoint recently that really helps us tell the story. And so all these things will land on our website and people can come there and begin to constantly see and keep up with us with the things that we're doing to get his legacy out. We're trying to do whatever we can so that the people like us who get bitten by this bug will have something that they can look at right away to learn about Mr. Ealey.
You can go to the website, it's ealeyproject.org. You can find out the story that the Richmond Free Press did for us. They also received an award from the Virginia Publishers Association for the article itself, and it is available on the website, as well as the story of a little bit about what Mr. Ealey is up to. Our website is new, and it's an in progress kind of work, but we're trying to make it more interactive and put much of this new stuff that we're doing on it so that people can stay abreast. Another effort that is helping us get the word out is the Richmond Public Library. The Richmond Public Library has a program called the Memory Lab. It is sponsored by the Mellon Foundation. They were kind enough to allow us to become one of their anchor programs so that we can do our filming there. Part of the video recordings that Janice referenced and that we mentioned earlier to get oral histories. We now have 9 clients that we've successfully interviewed. Most recent client, Mr. Du Bois Miller, and he's from Lynchburg, Virginia. He's a Richmond resident now, but he is a man who spent 34 years in the Virginia Correctional Institute and rose to the status of director of their educational program for the inmates himself. And so the kind of information that we're starting to pick up now is discussions related to the Black Panthers, the Vietnam War, the Great Migration, Green Book, things of those nature that are intimately connected to the African American community, but are not broadly talked about.
The third objective is to begin to put materials together so that we can have traveling or mobile or permanent exhibits that tell this story.
One final mention on that is if we can get our stuff into grammar schools, high schools, universities, museums, information centers, that will expand on the amount of enhancement we can do to build on what's already available with the development of what America is and who America is.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Jim, because I had just written a note to myself to mention the Black History Museum located right here in historic Jackson Ward. And I say that because a lot of baseline information is housed in that institution.
I'd like to make one more point too about the Ealey Project. Mm-hmm. We are extremely lucky to be partnering with the Historic Jackson Ward Association because Mr. Ealey is not just an icon in the civil rights movement, but he is a beloved resident of Jackson Ward. They are one in our historical account, and they are partners in that effort every step of the way. So if I could just read something for you, and I'll do my best to be concise. TEP believes that we all can make a positive contribution to our accurate historical narrative. Take the first step. Find some small group or a big group that has a positive focus and lay your marker down. This is the people's world, and we need to get history correct for our future generations. And this is an all hands on deck type of project. We don't change American history unless we all contribute to its effort. So if you're looking for something to do, there's 2 things you can do. Do good and help others. And if you particularly would be interested in getting involved, the Ealey Project has a website, as I mentioned. It's ealeyproject.org. You can contact me directly. We're going to have a growing base of volunteers and staff, and so that could be a future way to help. One way you can always help is you can donate financially to make sure that what we have available to us are the funds necessary to make such an enormous project a success, and the success will be a credit to the people like you.
And what I would add to that is become an engaged citizen. Please get involved with your neighborhood associations. We stand on the shoulders of ancestors who have done their work, and we just need to continue to make sure that that work gets done. I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you are a member of the Jackson Ward community, please join your Jackson Ward Association, even if you're not a member of the Jackson Ward community, but somebody in your life, some road in your life passed through here. You may join this association because you care about Jackson Ward. So we do ask you to do that. And through that effort and TEP and other efforts, we'll continue to try to contribute to this American historical narrative. Our website is hjwa.org. Just that easy, hjwa.org.
Thank you.
Yep.